Coming up today, troubling news surrounding Christian Wilkins that should have every Raiders fan on high alert. On top of that, we've got some serious buzz from inside the building about players sitting on the roster bubble. It's the kind of stuff that can shake up depth charts and change careers. Let's start with the headline, Christian Wilkins. A photo surfaced recently that's raising real concern. It shows Wilkins, in a walking boot, on the same ankle he had surgery on back on October 5th, 2024, to repair a Jones fracture. The photo was taken at Kyle Van Noy's Charity Golf Challenge on June 23rd, almost 9 months after surgery, and he's still not fully recovered. For a player expected to be a cornerstone next to Max Crosby, this is alarming. Now, while there hasn't been an official statement from the Raiders or major beat reporters, this visual evidence speaks volumes. When your key defensive acquisition, the guy meant to transform your interior pass rush, is still not 100%, it's more than just a wait and see. It's a potential red flag with the season fast approaching. Now shifting gears, let's talk roster bubble rumors. According to Tashan Reed of The Athletic, the latest 53-man roster projection has sparked debate. Based on OTA and minicamp performance, some tough cuts might be coming, and one of them could be Dylan Lobb. Let's be clear, this isn't confirmed, but Reed suggests Lobb is in danger of being edged out. He breaks down the Raiders' running back depth chart like this. Ashton Jeanty is the lead back. No surprise there. Raheem Mostert is locked in as the third down option. Sincere McCormick brings versatility and depth. That leaves Zamir White and Dylan Lobb competing for what looks like the final spot. And this is where it gets interesting. White, known as Zeus, is the better traditional runner. Lobb, however, offers special teams value that could be decisive. It's a classic battle of offensive impact versus special teams utility. As of now, it's a coin flip, and depending on what the coaching staff prioritizes, either guy could win that final job. But one thing's clear, we're entering the part of the offseason where every rep counts. And while the stars get all the headlines, these fringe roster decisions often determine the backbone of your team. If it were up to me, I'd keep Dylan Lobb. His value on special teams is hard to ignore, and with full confidence in Ashton Jeanty as the lead back, keeping a dynamic returner like Lobb just makes sense. But if the Raiders believe they have enough depth in special teams elsewhere and want to keep the better pure runner, I get why they lean towards Zamir Zeus White. Either way, this is one of the tightest position battles heading into training camp. Now, let's move on to another headline from Tashan Reed's report, and it's one nobody saw coming. Thayer Munford might start. Yeah, you heard that right. A player many thought could be cut or traded is now in legitimate contention for a starting role on the offensive line. According to Reed, there's a position battle brewing at left guard between Dylan Parham, Thayer Munford, and Jordan Meredith. While Munford spent his first 3 years in the league at tackle, he does have experience at guard from his college days, and that versatility is starting to pay off. Reed noted that rookies Charles Grant and Caleb Rogers still have a long way to go before they're ready to challenge for playing time. That aligns with what I've heard too. Both have long-term upside, but this season might be more about development than contribution. So what are the chances Munford actually starts? I'd put it at 10 to 15% right now. Not zero, but not likely either. Everything I'm hearing suggests that the projected starting five on the O-line looks like this. LT, Colton Miller. LG, Dylan Parham. C, Jackson Powers. Johnson. RG, Alex Kappa. RT, DJ Glaze. Still, Munford has looked solid as a backup guard. In fact, based on minicamp whispers, he might even be ahead of Meredith in that regard. Meredith, for his part, is also being considered as a depth option at center. The only real scenario where Munford cracks the starting lineup? A Parham trade, but there's no sign the Raiders are actively shopping him. Sure, if a team calls with a strong offer, maybe things change. But as of now, Parham is expected to hold down the job. Now onto the final rumor for today, and this one concerns safety, Trey Taylor. According to Reed's latest projection, Taylor could be cut. And honestly, I came to a similar conclusion in my own 53-man projection. If I had to rank players just outside the cut line, Taylor would probably be number 54 or 55, right on the edge. Here's the breakdown from Reed. Jeremy Chin is expected to see a lot of work in the nickel, especially in the box. When he lines up there, the Raiders often bring Lonnie Johnson Jr. in as a third safety. Unless the team makes a move for another nickelback, this rotation is likely to stay in place through camp. And while Reid didn't mention Trey Taylor by name, the implication is clear. The top 4 safeties seem to be Chin, Isaiah Pola-Mao, Lonnie Johnson Jr., and Marcus Epps. That doesn't leave a lot of room. Now, Taylor does offer value at free safety, and if the Raiders carry 5 safeties, he's got a shot. But the emergence of Thomas Harper complicates things. Harper wasn't expected to make this kind of impression, but he's quietly had a very strong offseason. He showed flashes last year and seems to be building on that momentum. He could be one of those under-the-radar guys who ends up with a real role. As for Taylor getting cut, I'm going out on a limb and giving this one 3 just-win babies. He's right on the bubble. And with Harper rising, he's got to fight hard to hold his ground. As of mid-June, if I had to project how the Raiders' 53-man roster will look come August, I'd say Trey Taylor getting cut is a real possibility. Based on what we've seen, and more importantly, what we've heard, I'm giving this scenario 3 just-win babies on the likelihood scale. Why? Because Thomas Harper has been that impressive. Taylor, talented as he is, wasn't drafted by this regime, and that matters. When a player isn't your guy, the pressure to stand out becomes even higher, and Taylor hasn't separated himself in the way the coaches seem to want. Meanwhile, Chris Smith hasn't even entered the roster conversation at this point. For Taylor to make this team, he'll need to show 2 things: that he can cover consistently in the secondary, that he's reliable on special teams, and right now, the competition is fierce. This leads to a tough but fair question for Raider Nation. Keep or cut Trey Taylor? It's not easy. He won the Jim Thorpe Award, and yes, he has the skill to be on just about any roster in the NFL. But in Las Vegas, the equation is different. This coaching staff values linebackers who can contribute on special teams just as much, if not more, than 5th safeties. If they feel confident in Lonnie Johnson Jr. and Thomas Harper as depth behind Jeremy Chin and Isaiah Pola-Mao, Taylor might end up the odd man out, and that's a hard pill to swallow. If you told me a few months ago that this would be our safety room and that Trey Taylor might not even make the final roster, I wouldn't have believed it. It's a surprising turn, and for some fans, it's going to sting. Let's move to another key roster rumor, and this one is big. The Raiders might keep 7 defensive tackles. That's right. Zachary Carter is trending toward a roster spot, and it might come at the cost of other positions. According to Tashin Reed, the Raiders have frequently alternated between 4-man and 5-man fronts throughout OTAs. Given their ongoing issues at the nickelback position, they're expected to favor a 5-man front as their base defense. That makes interior depth critical. With Christian Wilkins still recovering from the Jones fracture he suffered last October, Carter has been filling in during OTAs. Wilkins hasn't taken part in any off-season practices, and his health will be one of the biggest storylines entering camp. If Wilkins isn't fully ready when training camp begins, don't be surprised if rookies like Marlon Hemingway and Byron Page start pushing for a bigger role. But for now, Carter holds the edge. He's looked reliable, physical, and most importantly, available. And availability might be the trait the Raiders value most on the defensive line right now. With Christian Wilkins still sidelined, Zachary Carter has been getting increased reps, including some time with the first-team defense. And let's be real, that's only happening because of growing concern inside the building about Wilkins' health. Let's not sugarcoat it. Wilkins is still in a walking boot 9 months after surgery. That alone tells you the Raiders are closely watching his progress, and Carter is benefiting from that uncertainty. Right now, I'd give Carter's chances of making the 53-man roster 2 just-win babies, meaning it's possible, but it says more about the situation around him than his own breakout. From what's being reported and echoed by insiders, the Raiders' top 3 defensive tackles are Christian Wilkins, Byron Young, and Matthew Butler. That's been consistent through OTAs, and it's reflected in projections across the board. If Carter makes this roster, it means one of 2 things. The Raiders are truly worried about Wilkins' readiness for the season. They're preparing to carry 7 defensive tackles, which is extremely rare, especially given how much cap space is already committed to the defensive front. And that brings us to some of the depth names. The team is expected to hold on to both rookies Hemingway and Page, and PJ Lualu has shown enough that he's expected to secure a spot too. That's 6 defensive tackles right there. Keeping a 7th would be a major indicator that something's not right with Wilkins, because normally, teams don't overload at that position unless they're bracing for injuries or rotational inconsistencies. Now for the biggest surprise from Reed's report, Undrafted rookie John Joyner might make the final roster. Let that sink in. An undrafted edge rusher out of Minnesota could crack a defensive line room stacked with 5 other edge rushers and 7 defensive tackles. Reed noted that Tyree Wilson and Charles Snowden are competing to be the first edge rusher off the bench. That alone is already a headline. Wilson, a former first-rounder, is under pressure. The team has a looming decision on his 5th-year option after the season, and unless he delivers, they may decline it. Meanwhile, Charles Snowden has a legal case approaching just as training camp opens, which complicates the entire situation. If Wilson can't clearly beat out Snowden given those off-field issues, it's going to raise serious questions about his future in silver and black. As for John Joyner, he's a long shot, but an intriguing one. Reed described him as a bendy, explosive pass rusher who could start making noise once the pads come on. I'll be honest, I'm rooting hard for this kid. He was my top-ranked undrafted free agent signing by the Raiders. Based on his tape, he had day 3 draft potential. If he can show out during camp and preseason, he might push for a roster spot, especially if the Raiders decide to carry 5 edge rushers. But let's keep it in perspective. If Joyner makes the team, it might mean cutting someone more polished like a Trey Taylor or Tommy Eichenberg, players who offer value in the secondary or on special teams, where depth is more traditionally prioritized. So yes, there's a small shred of truth to this rumor. But for now, I'm giving Joyner's odds just one just-win baby. A long shot, but a fun one to keep an eye on as camp unfolds. Right now, John Joyner is a name Raiders fans should keep on their radar. He's not just another camp body. He's a potential wild card, a player who may not yet have a defined role but brings traits that make coaches take notice. His upside, it might not be as a traditional hand-in-the-dirt defensive end. Instead, think of him as more of a stand-up outside linebacker, a versatile edge threat who can move, attack, and create disruption in space. If the Raiders are looking to replace someone like K'Lavon Chaisson, or if they're seeking a player to fill a hybrid role like Devin White was expected to thrive in, someone who roams the edge, plays fast, and wreaks havoc in north-south pursuit, Joyner might just be that guy. Don't get it twisted. This isn't a claim that John Joyner is Devin White or Azeez Ojulari, but stylistically, the role fits, especially in Patrick Graham's system, where flexibility and explosiveness off the edge matter more than just size or draft status. Graham often lines up with 5 defenders on the line, leaving one edge rusher free to stand, move, and read. That's where Joyner could thrive, as the rover who lines up wide, tracks the quarterback, and explodes into gaps when the protection slides away. If you're still looking for a comp, here's one that might hit home. Think back to how Malcolm Kuntz looked in his first year. Raw, not polished against the run, but flashing just enough juice as a situational pass rusher that made you say, he could be something. That's exactly what Joyner feels like. A developmental piece with edge quickness and just enough burst to make noise if given the right assignments. So if Tosh and Reed is projecting him onto the 53-man roster, that's not noise. That's worth tracking. Joyner might not be a week 1 starter. He might not even dress early on. But if he can carve out a specialty role, even as a pass-rushing linebacker on 3rd downs, he becomes a valuable piece in a system that thrives on creative pressure looks. Training camp is going to tell the full story. But Joyner, he's officially one of the most intriguing underdogs to watch this summer.